Hello, and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system. Particularly, we're working on this compensation dashboard, and we're currently focusing on this market section of that dashboard. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, founder and principal consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, I want to finally take um, data from our market study or market analytics sheet and populate it here. And this is going to be based initially on this title. So our base view is going to be whatever title is populated up here is going to get passed to our Google Apps script side. And then it's going to go through, grab that value, filter the data by that value, and then return this in order to be populated here. Once we get that done, then we'll work on these filters right here. If you have no idea what I'm talking about with this, please go back and watch our previous episodes where we built this from scratch, and it'll make a lot more sense where we're going forward here. So let's jump in. The first thing that we're going to grab or need to grab is our job title. And this job title here is simply a regurgitation of whatever is in this box. So if we change this to say customer service representative, then that will be changed down here as well, as you can see. So once this changes, we can then get the value of it. And when we get the value of it, we can then send that over to our Google Apps script and grab and populate. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's come over to our code. And the file that we're going to be working under is our total rewards page, because we're going to need that ID for that input box. And then we'll need to figure out where it's being populated. So this is it right here, this comp market job title. So if we remember, the calculations and the population of this field occurs within our head section. So right up here, this is all of our calculations. And this here is where we are populating the slider information. And here's our comp org salary. And here we go. So this is where we populate that box. And I mean, we could simply just create another variable getting this value. But since this value is already set to that, let's store that in a variable called, let's call it let's just keep what we were doing. Title value is going to equal that job title as well. And then we can clean this up because eventually, we won't need all of this, but let's get it functional and we'll clean it. Now let's think about how we're going to do our calculations, because when we pull data, say human resources generalist, there's more than likely going to be more than one human resources generalist in our data with the salary breakdown. Now, depending on the methodology that you're using or the third party used to construct your data, you would do different things with that. For the sake of our situation and this PCM, we are simply just going to take all those instances of in this case, human resources generalist, and then just average the 10th, 25, median, 75, and 90th percentile. And that should give us a little bit of good average. Now, just remember, though, this is truly based on your methodology. So your methodology may also consider things such as weighting. Very, very rarely, at least in my experience, are you going to find your job title matches exactly the same as your survey's job title, across the board. Typically, you're going to weight. So there's going to be more and more things that you're going to have to do with that methodology. But for this case, we're just going to average some stuff. And since we're going to be already over in our analytics, I'm going to conduct that calculation on our Google Apps script side and then send the result here. Now up here in our head, we were actually doing it a little bit different and performing the calculations here. Now, if I was to build this out without doing demonstrations or anything like that, trying to get code snippets, I would have done all of these on our Google Apps Script side and then sent the final result over here. It's just cleaner in my eyes, but maybe we'll do that once we get, this dashboard here done. We'll go through and just move all that stuff over. But for now, let's take this. So now this is stored in a variable, whatever that job title is, and it'll change. And every time it changes, it just simply stores it in this variable. So now what we need to do is take this variable here and send it over to our Google Apps Script side. And this would be a good place to do this. We're getting data back here and then running a bunch of calculations with our helper functions. And unless you have a ridiculously old computer or very slow connection, we shouldn't see too much of a lag if we did this. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not much when you're thinking of computing bandwidth. So let's go ahead and put it right here. Right after it stores it, let's just fire off that. App script code. So to do that, we will type in Google script run, and this is going to receive data back. So we're going to need that success handler. And we will say when it returns back, we want to run a JavaScript code over here on our client side. So let's call that pop market data. And what we're going to run is not the get this one right here. This is what we're going to run. We don't want to do the drop down, but we want to get this data, the one that we've been working on. So get market data. And what we're going to pass to that function to use is this variable right here. Okay, good. Now this shouldn't, as I was mentioning, running this ahead of all these calculations shouldn't slow it down, but we'll know that if we, when we run it, we'll be able to see if there's a significant lag here or not. There will be the first time, but once it's cached in Chrome, it shouldn't matter, but we'll see. Okay, so we have that. So let's go down here and create this function. And this function is going to be in our JS side. So we'll just come down here all the way to the end. And one thing to keep in mind when we are using helper functions, so our server side and our client side is separate. The only way that we connect those two, well, not the only way, but the way we are connecting it is through this, our Google Apps Script run. And then that allows us to connect. So if we're running a helper function like, say, calculate average or sum, and we're doing it over here on our client side, this JavaScript side, we need to make sure that it has access to that function. So if the function's over here on our server side, our app script side, it's not going to have access to that unless we give it. So since we're going to be running this, let's find it here, because we moved our average, linear regression, sum, and average. See, this function, this calculate average function, is in our client side. If we're going to do this from our Google Apps Script side, we would need to make sure that Google Apps Script, that server side, also has access to this function. So the point I'm trying to make is wherever you're going to do your calculations, try to keep that consistent, because in order to do it on our Apps Script side, we're just going to copy this code and I put it in our utilities just to make sure that our app script has access to it. Okay, so we have our code here, and let's just give it an alert. And what we're going to do and show in this alert is once this function in our Google Apps Script side runs, it's going to return a value. In fact, it's probably going to return Actually, it will return. This is how we'll do it, is an array of values. And we need to refer that array that's coming over to it, with a name so we can use it. And let's just call it, we'll just call it data. And then that'll be data. And then we'll pass that to an alert when we get done. Okay, good. So now we have this connected. So now we just need to write that Google Analytics or our analytics function here. So what we have here is we are getting all of our market data. And then we created a couple variables here with hard-coded values. We're going to only work on the job piece to provide that baseline view of when an individual opens a page or that default view. So it looks like we have this built out. Let's refresh our memory and see what actually is happening here. Let's run this function and see what it's producing. Okay, good. So it is going through that sheet and filtering out all the jobs with accountants and auditors at that 7th index, and then just populating that field. So we can continue on with this. Let's push this out, because now remember, we're sending information. We are sending this value here to this app script code, and we're doing that from our code right here. We're sending that variable, which is storing that value. So let's just refer that data. Let's give it a name, and we'll just call it something simple. We'll just call it job. There we go. We'll call it, actually, let's not call it job. Let's call it market job. There we go. So now instead of using this, we can simply just refer to that when it's done. But we'll have to give it something here. All right, good, good, good. So now that we have that data here, we need to go through and essentially start constructing what it is that we're going to return. And we are going to need, we'll pick on the HR generalist because it's obviously the first one. And it looks like we only have, I don't know, maybe 4. Well, we'll see once we filter it. We're going to need to grab our our 10th percent, our 25%, our median, and our 75 and our 90. So let's look at the median. We need to figure out the index of this column here that's going to come to us in our returned array. So to do that, we can simply just highlight that mean annual salary. And we're using annually just because in our fictitious company, we do everything as a base of annually, and then any further calculations, we just take it from that annual. Just to keep it simple. But if you are doing this, if you're doing more in line with actual how you will see in operations, if you have, say, non-exempt employees and your company policy is that non-exempt employees will always be paid hourly, exempt is salary, then you could do both. But for the sake of getting this demonstration completed, we'll just use annual. So we know that our mean annual, our wage annual, is at the 23rd column. Now remember, an array is index based, so it starts at 0. So we just need to simply subtract that. And we know that this is now going to be at index 22 because we just need to subtract that 1. So let's go ahead and start building this out. So let's come down here and let's create a couple variables, because what we're going to do is something similar to this. Actually, it's going to be almost identical to this. So let's just grab this and copy and paste it. And you'll see that we're also going to return an array. So what we're going to do is we are going to not use area last row. Let's call this constant. Actually, no, this is not exactly what we're going to do. I'm sorry, I copied before I knew it. The example that we're going to use is where we grabbed our filtering data. See if I can actually find it. If I can't find it, we'll just start it over. Okay, we'll just start it over. I thought I'd be able to easily find it and just start copying and pasting, but I copied the wrong thing here. We don't, necessarily need to have that because we already have the values and we're not populating a drop down. So let's just create a piece here, and this can be a constant, and this can be a constant. Okay, so we need the filter. Let's call it filtered median. Now that filtered median is going to come up here and grab this filtered market data. And what we're going to need to do is then map it, because we need to grab all the elements at a specific index and then create a new array with that. And that's what map does. So my mistake, let me pull this over here. This is where we're at. That's what we're doing right here. Sorry about that. That one was totally on me, not switching over the view. So we created a constant variable filtered median. And what we're going to do is take this filtered market data, which has all that filtered data, and then we need to map all the values out of that array based on a specific index. And we know that index is 22. So to do that, we simply map, and we'll stick with our convention of saying it's a row and using our arrow function, and our row is going to be at 22. Now, once we have this median, let's go ahead and log this out. Yeah, once we have our median, then what we're going to need to do is run an average from it. Let's give this something that we know exists, because we're not actually sending anything over without doing it from our client side. So let's call this human resources, just so I can find it. We'll say that's a generalist. Okay, good. So let's run this and then see what it produces. Okay, so we have our two-dimensional array. Voila. And then we have, so we only have 4 HR generalist data points in our survey data. And here they are. Now you'll notice that this is a one-dimensional array. And if you remember our calculate average, because that's what we're going to need to do to find one value, is we just need to send it over an array of values. And we have that, and their numbers. So it's perfect. So let's now come back to our code here, and we can simply call that average and store the result in a variable. And let's just call this filtered median average. And that is going to equal calculate average. And this is where our helper functions come in handy. If we're doing the same thing over and over, we just send it to that function there. And what we're going to want to send is this variable that contains all that data. So now let's log that out and see what we get. And we'll run this. And voila, that is our average median for all our HR generalists inside of our data here. So now we're going to need to do the same exact thing to our 10%, 25, 75, and 90. And let me do the 10%, and then I'll pause the video and then write out the other ones so you're not watching me type. So let's just call this 10 perk. And that is going to be equal to this, because we need to go into our market data, our filtered market data, map that to a specific index. And remember, we did something like this where we created the map up here. We're kind of taking the long way just for demonstration purposes, but we'll Once we clean it up, we'll probably do the same exact thing, just automatically create the map and then loop through it. So if this is at 22 and we know 25 is to the left, 10 is to the left of that, we can simply just say this is 0, 20, I mean. And then 25% would be 21 and so on. And then what we're going to need to do is copy this because we're going to need to find the average of that as well. And this is going to be filtered 10, let's say perk average. There we go. And it's not going to be this filter 10%. It's going to, or this filter median. It's going to be this filter 10%. Now let's go ahead and log out these, and you'll see filter 10%, and then filter 10% average. And then we'll log this out, and you'll see, let's go ahead and put this above to where it makes sense. We'll run it. Okay, that's horribly misspelled. So filter 10%. Oops. There we go. Okay, good. So this is the 10%. These are all the 10% values. This is the average of the 10%, median values, median. So now we can do the same exact concept and keep going all the way to 25. I'm going to pause the video here and populate that just so you don't have to watch me type all that stuff out. So see you in a sec. Okay, cool. So here we go. We have them all. And as you can see, if our median is 22, 10% is 20, we just simply built off of that. Now let's get rid of all these logs because we don't want to log anything out. What we want to do is return. And it looks like I am missing a curly bracket. There we go. Now close that out. So what we're wanting to return is an array of all of these values. So we want the filtered market average, that, and then we want the 10%, and it's helpful to do this in order so you can keep in mind 0, 1. It just makes it a little bit easier to remember. Obviously, this is off now that I said that. So we'll start with 10% as the 0, 25% is the index number 1, median will be 2, and then 75 will be this one, and then our 90. Okay, good. So one thing that we're going to run into is these names here on our sheet don't match what we actually have in our organization. We don't call job titles accountants and auditors. So 2 ways we can handle that. One, we can create a map, which has its pluses and minuses. You could just put our job titles in another column there and then run that. Or since we are just creating this survey ourselves, we can just leave what these are truly called in the methodology and then how we mapped them, and then just refer or change these accountants and auditors to what our job title is. So again, that all falls back onto your methodology of how you handle and construct this. So let's erase this because we won't need that. Well, we don't need to erase it. We can leave it commented out for now. And we're passing our market job here. So we don't need HR generalist. We should select HR generalist, of course, to come through here. But what we need to check through our filter is if that is equal to this. And then if it is, well, of course, if it is, it's going to try and return all this or nothing and then return this as an array. Now what we can do is this is going to be coming over. Okay, 820, got an error. There we go. That'll take care of that. So this is coming over to our client side, and it's coming over and we are giving it a name of data, and then we're just having it pop up an alert with that data. So let's come back over here to our page and let's refresh our page. Make sure the views are right so you're seeing it. Yep. And this is populated. Now, what we should see is an alert. Okay, good. So we have an alert, and I know you can't see the alert because it's kind of off the screen. It's at a different Z index that's higher than our page. But what our alert is saying is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So it's giving us an array. It's just nothing. Just returns nothing. There's nothing there. And the reason there's nothing there is because initially it's going to populate at all jobs. So that'll be something that we need to handle. But let's actually change this all jobs to HR generalist. And we should get another pop-up with that array of data. And yep, sure enough. So we now have 44845250. And if you're following along, this is exactly what you should see. You should have 4 values, and they should essentially make sense. So you have 44,000, 52,000, 65, 80, 98. So that's good. So now the only thing we need to do is populate that inside our fields here. So let's go back and make sure that we name those fields. Pretty sure we did. And let's find it here. Okay, here's our slider. That's our market org. And okay, so we have not. Okay, so this is our, let's keep the same one here. Let's just copy this. So that's not market org. This is going to be ID, we'll just call this market 10. So we know the market org. Here we go. So we know the market org is actually the companies, and the regular market is going to be the market data. Okay, so this is going to be 25. This will be market, what do we call it down here? Market median, we spelled it out. Market median, and then 75 here, and 90. Okay, good. So now we have the pieces for it, and I want to correct this here because it's not going to be a basic add-on. Instead of having to do it later, we'll just do it now. Because you want your spans to actually match what it is that they belong to. Then this will be 75. Sorry about this. I should have already did this and took care of it. It's my bad. And that should be 90. Okay, good. So now we can come back over to our JavaScript side and start building that out. So instead of this alert, we need to create ourselves some variables. And let's create a variable for our market 10 value, and that is going to be equal to dot value is going to be equal to our data 0. Excuse me. So now wow, I really messed that up. Got ahead of myself. Let market 10 value is going to be equal to document.getElementById. I was getting ahead of myself because I was thinking about how we could do this differently. And we need to get that market 10 and then store that in a variable. And then we need to take this and then set that variable. And we don't have to do it this way. We can just do this document 10. But I'm already thinking ahead of how it is we're going to clean it up. And once we get this done, we'll probably just map this so we don't have to do this like that. But okay, so we have that. In actuality, if you're thinking about it, if you're seeing what we're doing here, you may be asking yourself, and if you are, pat yourself on the back, why are we even putting it in a variable when we can just do this? And that is exactly right. So if you were thinking of that, you're already starting to jump ahead on how to write cleaner code. So then we can just take this, because I doubt we'll ever need to truly access those. So there's really no reason to store it in a variable. So this will be 25, and this will be 1, and this will be median. That will be 2. This will be 75, and that will be 3. And now we're going to need 90. 4 and 90. Okay, good. So let's run this and see what we got. We'll refresh it. This should be filled with nothing initially. So, yep, not playing with anything here. And now let's come up here and change HR generalist to something that we know it has. And then it'll change HR generalist, and then it will come over as nothing. Now, there's a reason why it's not populating. And if you were following along, you'll notice that the data that came over in our alert was just a list. It was just a list of numbers. It wasn't an array. So how we can fix that? Because if we're going to access an array, we're going to need it to come to us as a one-dimensional array. So let's come back over here to our analytics and make sure that this is, okay, so it is an array, so it's coming over and we should be able to filter that. So we're troubleshooting this right now. We're making sure that this is, coming to us correctly. So it is passing it over. The alert is making it an array because it's not showing it. Console log, if we did a console log, it would show us as an array. We may have to do that. So let's go back over here. And there's a couple of things I'd like to do. So we have market 90. So that's our span, market 90 placeholder, 75, market median, market 25, market 10. And let's see, market 10, market 25, market median. This is going to be equal data. Okay, so let's do an alert here. Let's do a console log, actually. And I want to see what the data is and why it's actually not populating inside that input box correctly. Okay, so let's save that and then we'll go back and refresh it. And if you're following along here, take a look at how long it's truly taking your code to run. Make sure that the spinner isn't closing down ahead of time and whatnot, and that it's not too slow for you. If so, you can do that. Okay, so our console log is 000, and it is in an array. Okay, so that's good. That's correct. So now let's change this to HR generalist and see what we got. And our HR generalist should now be running that. And it populates 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 as a string. Okay. let's go back and look at, so our number's coming over fine. It's coming over as an array. It's coming over as plain text, so the value should be set based on this, and our data is correct coming over. So if you think about trying to troubleshoot this, it's not up to this point, it's up to this point. So let's go back over here and see what we did here. Okay, nope, I see exactly what we did. So we'll have to think of this later. So we can't have, I was mistakenly thinking that the span up here, I just wasn't paying attention. That was my mistake, but that's the label. So I was thinking that this was a for this ID, but it's not. It's a span. It's its own element. So we can't have market 10 ID for the span and market 10 ID for the input. Because what happens is let's go back and actually see if that is what it is. I mean, we know that's exactly what it is. But to illustrate that, instead of this value at this market 10, let's put text content, and you'll see what happens. Let's fill the text of that first market 10. Let me close out this console log. And you'll see that we have 10. You know, we have this 10. Oh, there it goes. 0. So unique IDs all the time. And if it's a for, then you can use it to describe it. But it's not. So we're just going to change this back to our basic add-on. Actually, we don't really even need an ID for this span, because we're never going to change. Well, yes, we are actually. There may be times when we need to change this if we're not going by 10%, 25% median or whatever. There may be a time when you want to change this dynamically to whatever it is that we're selecting. But for now, we'll just leave it like that. That way it's unique, because it's going to stop at the first one and then it's going to say, okay, well, I have an error because now I have 2. All right, so now let's come back here and refresh this. And that should go ahead and populate. And initially it should populate with zeros. And that's probably because we haven't changed it from text content. So let's go back here and do that real quick. Should be value, not text content. There we go. Now we'll refresh it. Open it up, 000. Now let's change it to HR generalist, something that we know we have, and this should go ahead and update. It's running its code now. That is a significant lag, so we'll have to clean that up a little bit, but there you go. Now you see that it actually works. The one thing that we're going to have to do, though, is you'll notice that we have the formatting piece, and we already know how to do that. I'm not going to have y'all sit here and watch me, because we drilled that into the ground with the number format, change it to English US to get it into this format here. But other than that, this now works. So I'm going to end this video here. In the next video, we are going to filter our data, and we're going to have to write an if statement with just, 4 ifs or whatnot, maybe 5 or 4 and an else. And I'll go ahead and write this in here, show it to you at the beginning of the next video so you have it. And then once we get done with these filters, we can actually just we'll be finished with our compensation dashboard. And then we can move on to I believe we're going to do our career pathing dashboard next. So I hope this has been informative. If it has, please hit that subscribe button, and I look forward to our next video. Until next time, please take care.